intent wouldn't be to hurt anyone more than, obviously, when you use force, people are gonna get hurt from time to time. That wasn't the intent of this. I think the use of force was without question reasonable, given the fact we had to do something, given the fact that we were obligated to handcuff him to the ring. That's the way we did things every single time. Given the fact of what happened earlier that evening, had a fight had occurred in there, 4 grown men in a small holding cell like that, more injuries would have been sustained. Almost certainly he would have had greater injuries, and potentially the police officers. And I didn't work for that salary to go home hurt to my wife.
There's a section of that same policy that talks about gratuitous force. It's 4 there. Can you read that?
Like to read out loud?
Yeah, please.
Gratuitous force. Officers may not use any degree of force against a suspect once the suspect has been restrained, is no longer resisting, and is not a threat to the officer or others.
So is it correct that he was restrained in a holding cell?
He wasn't restrained. He was in a holding cell, yes, sir.
Is being in a holding cell being restrained?
Well, he was in a position that we had to handcuff him to the ring. His hands were not cuffed behind his back.
Before he got handcuffed, was he restrained in a holding cell?
I guess that's up for interpretation, and I'm not a lawyer, sir, so I'll trust that someone smarter than me can answer that question.
Was he a threat to the officer while he was closed behind the door with the bolt locked?
I object, that's been asked and answered.
I don't think so.
I don't think this witness has answered that.
Good question, sir.
Was he a threat to an officer or others when he's behind the cell door and the bolt is locked?
He was not a threat to us at that time, no, sir.
So what you're saying is underneath this policy, even though you don't want to interpret it, that if it was true, that an officer can never use any degree of force when the suspect has been restrained and that he's not a threat to others, that this is in exact conflict with this mandate to go in and put people on the ring. So you would have violated your own policy to do that.
That was common practice, and that is how I was trained. That is how we did things at the Columbia Police Department. That is how we did things for 3 years.
So you were trained that some policies apply if you want them to and some don't.
This, in regards to handcuffing people to the ring, this is the way it was done for 3 years. Probably longer, but I can speak to the 3 years that I was there working.
Do you remember any officer being disciplined for not putting a prisoner on a ring?
No, because that never happened, sir, to my knowledge. I don't know of anyone who, when placed in this situation, did not handcuff someone to the ring because that's what you were going to do. That's what you must do.
Let's go back to, were there other options at one point?
What do you mean?
Could you have gone and gotten a glass of water for him before he started going down this path?
Well, we have made attempts to alleviate his pain, starting with Officer Sanders in the garage.
And did that help?
I'm sure it did. I mean, I suppose. I know when I got mazed, the water certainly helped.
It relieves a lot of the pain.
Sure.
And he
And
was calmer.
we further made attempts when we were looking for the decontamination wipes and were unable to find any.
And after that, you could have gone to the break room, got a plastic cup, and brought him back a cup of water. Isn't that correct?
I suppose so, yes.
Could you have moved him to a different cell that had water that was working?
There were no cells that had running water.
No cells at the Columbia Police Department ever have running water?
The only water that worked was in the toilet. There was not access to running water, not functioning. They're sinks, but they don't function, or at least they didn't at the time, and they hadn't been functioning.
Do you remember Officer Sanders telling Baker that he could use the toilet water?
Yes.
Do you remember how he said it?
Well, I'm sure he just told them that there was water available there and that the sink didn't work.
Did Mr. Baker seem to be upset by that?
Well, I don't think any harm was meant in that statement. I mean, honestly, I think he was just telling him if you need water right now, that's where you can find some, but there's none in the sink don't work, I don't mean anything.
Did
I don't think he meant
Baker
anything.
seem upset by that comment?
I don't remember.
Did Mr. Baker repeatedly ask for the water to be turned on, cursing at the same time?
I understand that he was asking for the water to be turned on, but unfortunately, there's no way to do that because the water did not work.
But he definitely wanted water.
I suppose, you know, he had been given water already, but I suppose I probably wanted water too because I've been working calls all night and I get thirsty too.
But after you've been maced, it really helps when you put the water on, doesn't it? And it helped him.
It does, and when I got maced, I was exposed to water for less than the amount of time, I mean, for a lesser period than when he was. So,
Just mace affect different people differently.
yeah, for me, I wouldn't have been able to fight anyone when I was maced. It was terrible. I'd rather be tased than maced, me personally, but Mr. Baker fought through it, my understanding. And he continued, you know, to resist me while we were trying to search him, despite being maced.
Tell me how terrible the mace felt for you when you were maced.
I didn't feel good.
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
I think it goes to show that it affects people differently.
We've got to that.
Okay, I know that question.
The director?
Brandon, how is it you know that what Mr. Baker said in the car to you is what he said?
I've been able to, review reports and what was observed in the audio and documented statements that were made.
A few weeks ago, you watched the video from your car, didn't you? Which had the audio on it.
Yes,
And you heard Mr. Baker make those statements on that audio.
yes,
And you did that in Rob's criminal trial.
yes,
And so it's not a matter of you all of a sudden remembering something you claim not to remember. It's a matter of you got to hear it again, didn't you?
correct.
And you heard it that night too, didn't you?
I did.
There's some discussion about the policy regarding gratuitous force, and let's be clear. Regardless of what that sentence says, your understanding was the expectation of your superiors is bang on the door equals holding cell ring.
Correct.
End of story.
That is correct.
No further questions.
Okay. Board, questions of Witness? Let's see. You're no longer with the police department, is that right?
That's correct, sir.
And why did you leave?
Long version, I can give you, we've been here long already, so why not? I was engaged to be married to my wife after I began working there, and we were expecting our first child, daughter. And after this happened, first of all, after this happened, I didn't want, now that it wasn't just about me, it was gonna be about my wife and my daughter. These situations, for me, I've been placed in them. For police officers, you're gonna be put in situations that are not ideal, obviously, and you're gonna have to make some tough decisions, and you're gonna have to use force. You do it long enough, you're gonna have to use force. And I observed another police officer, Officer Sanders, be fired for doing something the exact way that we had been doing it for 2.5 to 3 years, the way we were trained to do it, in the exact way that I would have done it. And I was not willing to continue working somewhere knowing that I've got to support my wife and daughter. I didn't want that to happen to me.
No charges were brought against you in this whole proceedings
No, sir, I was cleared from the whole thing.
for everything.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thanks for coming. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
And, excuse me, nobody's on relay, right? Next witness, sir.
Sergeant Jason Jones.
Jason Jones.